And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cyrus Webb Presents. This is part of our 10-part series that we're doing with Dr. Teresa A. Smith, or Dr. TAS, around her book called Transformation. We ask you guys to use the hashtag Transformation Book. That's Transformation Book, as we are going throughout this series with Dr. Teresa A. Smith, or Dr. TAS. We've been talking with her about the messages of the book, what she hopes you're able to take away from it. I appreciate you all being with us. Hello to you, Anne. Appreciate you for being on with us. Annette. Appreciate you being on with us. There is Dr. TAS. Going to go ahead and bring her in. If you guys have not book, we're going to remind you how you can be able to do that. And of course, stay connected with Dr. TAS as well. Hello, Dr. TAS. How are you?
I'm great, Cyrus. How are you?
Doing really good. Doing really good. Great to see you as always. And now we can see, yeah, there you go. You got it perfect. So I should say, even though Dr. TAS says there's no such thing as mistakes, I messed up last week. So I'm going to say I messed up. That's what I'm going to say. I want to say I went into message 4 last week when it should have been message 3. Hello to you. I appreciate all of you coming in. Again, if you have not gotten Dr. TAS's book, make sure you guys get Transformation on Amazon. I'm going to remind you of that. So what we're going to do, hey, Earl, all is well with you, my man. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to message 3 this time. And it's an interesting one, primary focus, Dr. TAS, which is perfect for us today because I'm focused. I was ready with message 3. It's week 4, message 3. Week 4?
Yes. Message 3.
So I want to talk about primary focus, but I want to ask you, though, selfishly, first of all, you wrote this book, but what has it been like for you now going through it, message by message, and kind of dissecting it for the audience?
You know, Cyrus, like you, I'm always prepping. And it's amazing, even though I've said it for the audience, sometimes they think authors just say things just to get you to buy their book. Right. But every time I pick this book up and go through a message, I find something different. And I even went to message 4 because I knew you were going to, I'm thinking you're going to try to tie it in. And I saw something and it was like, oh, I didn't get that the first time I wrote it. I didn't get it the first time I read it. So for me, I am actually every week working my way through the book along with everybody else. So it's exciting.
And we want people to do that. Dr. TAS, let me tell you something. I didn't even share this with you before you went on here, but I found out something thanks to another guest, which is why I love doing Conversations Live, the radio show. It's ironic. We didn't know this when we set this up, but did you know that September is recognized as Self-Awareness Month? I didn't know that.
I did not.
I didn't know it until this week when I was talking to another guest, and they sent me a calendar, which I knew some of the things for September, but this month is recognized as Self-Awareness Month. So it's interesting that we're going through these messages during this month, going into the next month. But it's interesting. So for today, we're talking about primary focus. You begin it by saying this. What is your primary focus? A very personal question. Why is it important for us to identify what primary focus is, Dr. TAS, before we can recognize what it is in our particular life?
You know, Cyrus, I think it's important because lots of times we just do things and we do them because our family did them, my friends did this, and we're just doing it. And how can I say this nicely? We think it's a primary focus, but when you really begin to understand who you are and what you are to do in life, you realize it's not a primary focus. Then the question becomes, why were you doing that?
Yeah.
So,
and I think that's it. You give a great example. I love the jar. We're going to get into that a little bit later. But what I think is so interesting about primary focus, I think it goes to really message 1 about change is challenging. Because if you're not, that's one of the reasons why it's challenging. Because for one, you have to focus on what it is that you're saying you want to change and who you want to be. But you do take it a step further in message 3 about whose we are. And I think that, again, shows a big thing. You say this, and you talked about the connection. I did want to find the connection between message 3 and message 4, since we did skip ahead for those who are joining us live. And that is staying on track, because the two definitely are married together. Because for us to be able to stay on track, we have to know what our focus is. And as you say in this message, Dr. TAS, this is all encompassing, not just what we're talking spiritual. This is personal. This is professional. Did you know when you were writing this particular message that it was going to cover all aspects of life?
I want to say I did, Cyrus, but I don't think I understood the significance of it, though.
Okay.
Because as I'm going through each week, I get revelations, and I'm so transparent. I got a revelation today about primary focus.
Okay.
And what I realized was that some of the things in life that I've done, they really were coping mechanisms. I may have excelled at it, but it was a coping mechanism. So now that I have shifted, it's like, as you said with message one, it's hard for me to make the change because it is so ingrained in me.
Yeah.
But it really was a coping mechanism. So when you say, did I realize just how powerful or just how it would be integrated throughout all aspects of our life? I did, but I didn't understand the significance of it, though.
Got you. I want to say for those who are coming in, you're watching Cyrus Represents. This is part of my series I'm doing with Dr. TeresaASmith. You see her down there. This is her book up here, though. It's Transformation. It's her new book. And we're finding out together this week that this is also September, among other things, is recognized as Self-Awareness Month. And I think this is one of the important things about what we're discussing as Dr. TAS has been taking us through the messages of this book. This is week 4, but today we're discussing message 3, which is primary focus in her book. Why we have to know what our primary focus is. Hello, Tessa. Thank you so much for joining us from Canada. Appreciate you. But we have to know what our primary focus is before we can move forward. You say in this particular chapter, you give this: when God is your primary emphasis, you understand who He created you to be. I think what is so powerful for me for this message, Dr. Taj, is that for some people, this chapter is the answer.
Mm.
It's the answer to why they have not excelled in life. It's the answer to why they continue to be hurt, why they continue to be lost or feel lost, why they continue to feel unwanted, is because of the focus, where their focus has been and who they have decided to look to as their primary focus. So I want to talk about that, because if no other message is about faith, this chapter is it. This one is dripping faith from beginning to end. For yourself, do you think, especially as we've gone through the past year and a half, Dr. Taz, it is that anchor or finding that primary focus or emphasis that has helped you stay where you are today?
I think so, Cyrus, but I'm too transparent. Now, I waver like other people, but wavering for me is, I know what it is, but it is, I was talking about you earlier, Cyrus, and because I was having this epiphany, and I thought about what you've said publicly, and your question is, how has it been for me? I've known my focus, but I have felt anxiety around being able to fulfill the purpose.
Yeah.
Because the purpose is so much larger than me, and it is more than what I can conceive with my human brain. So for the last year, and I'm slowly coming out of it, folks, I have been in my purpose, but afraid of my purpose.
Yeah.
Because it's bigger than me. And I will say the reason I can tell you I'm afraid of it is because I don't have a roadmap. Typically in life, you can map out things. You know how it is to go. But with this, I do not. So that means, as Cyrus says, faith, this chapter, you've got to have faith, because without it, you don't know which way to go, because there is no roadmap when you look at your primary focus, because what you may find is your primary focus don't have anything to do with what you thought it did. So then what do you do? Yeah.
And Dr. Taj, to be even more transparent, and one thing, you're right. I believe in putting it all out there. Dr. Tessa, who's on now, someone says they can relate. Dr. Tessa, I'm glad you could spend this time with us on Sunday too. I was sharing with her about me being a suicide attempt survivor. And one of the things that I say all the time is that I have had in my life, and still at times have, a Moses complex, where I'm told I'm supposed to do something and I can find excuses. Well, this person's better at this. I'm not really as good as this, as I think this person would be better. And God will give us people to assist us, but doesn't take it away from us, right?
Yeah.
And I think in this particular message, when it comes to primary focus, I think it's so interesting you put this third, because for me, it kind of goes to the heart of if this is going to be able to happen at all or not. the
Yes.
transformation can happen at all, because if people aren't focused, which goes to what we talked about at the beginning, Dr. Taz, about when people set weight goals at the beginning of the year
Yes.
and
Mhm.
fall off of that, or they say, I'm going to do this, and then it doesn't last. Is it a loss of focus, or is it a lack of passion for the goal?
Hmm. Cyrus, a lack of passion for the goal
Hmm.
or lack of focus? I think it's the I think it's the fact that change is challenging.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
I can be passionate and I can have focus, but you're asking me to do something that's out of my comfort zone.
I
And
like it.
so therefore, I'd rather go back,
Hmm.
because I'm examining myself, guys.
Yeah.
I'd rather stay in the familiar. And I've said this many, many times about being in that familiar, but
Hmm.
I didn't understand it at the level that I needed to, because you don't even realize what you're doing half the time.
Yeah.
But you just go right back into what you've always done. And it's like, but yeah, I know I'm supposed to do this. I'm still passionate about it. I'm still
Hmm.
focused, but I'm going to do this
Yeah.
because this gives me a sense of calmness that the new thing doesn't give you.
Yes. Yeah. I'm with you on that. I'm totally with you. And I talk a lot about being in my comfort zone and what has kept me from pushing forward. We have someone who said, I'm also a suicide PTSD survivor. And this is also our month, too. This is Suicide Prevention Month, too, among other things, which is why I brought it up to Tess on her show. But that's the thing. I'm so glad you said that. Going back, so that is the answer. Change is challenging, right?
Mhm.
And so it kind of makes you think by the time you get to message 3 about primary focus, since you know now what it takes, how bad do you want it? And it really is about being honest with yourself and what you're able to do. You give this example, and you say this before the example. People often excel, and guys, I'm reading from the print edition of her book. It's on sale right now, also the Kindle edition of the book. But I'm reading from page 14 of the print edition, going into page 15, and this is what Dr. Taz writes. People often excel in the areas they like the most or apply themselves to the most. This requires prioritization. The priority or most significant uh, goal gets the most attention, preparation, and effort as we strive to achieve it. I'm reminded of a workshop presenter's demonstration of placing rocks in a mason jar until it was packed. And then she asked, is the jar full? And then you go on to give these different answers of everyone saying, yes, the jar is full.
Mhm.
And yet still she's able to add more, right?
Yep.
And then still asking the question. And finally, they get to the answer where the observers say, when the presenter asks, is the jar filled? The observers replied no. And it's so interesting because it really is about primary focus, right? It all
Mhm.
begins with that. Why do you think that example, it's a great example. Why do you think that resonated with you so much about that presenter and that example about the jar and the stones and the sand and the water? Why do you think that kind of resonated with you?
Well, when I was sitting there seeing it being done, I was like everybody else, no, you couldn't put anything more. But to see how we continue to put things in, at this point in time, I want us to look at it from the perspective of, we know what the primary focus is. It's that big rock.
Mm-hmm.
But what we do is we add more things to it, the gravel, the sand, the water, until we don't see the rock anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then we lose our focus. And
Yeah.
so when we talk about staying on track, we got to remember that rock is the most important thing. Yes, we can add additional things to it, to the jar with the rock, but when we put those other things in there, we lose track of the rock. And that's the reason why I thought it was so important for us to understand it's that first thing that we know we should do. And sometimes we shy away from it, but then we we just start adding other stuff. It's like eating a plate of food. You get your protein and you add all this other stuff and you eat the other stuff and then you don't eat your protein.
Yeah.
So again, it's like concentrating on the big rock, because if you concentrate on the big rock and if it's your true primary focus, everything else that you want to do, if it aligns, will be added and you won't have any problem with it.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the big thing here. And so it's a great idea for our audience to really think about this. And that's why I'm glad we're able to break these down. So those who are new to what we're doing here on Sundays, Dr. TeresaASmith, Dr. Taz, we are talking to her about the messages. She has 10 messages in her book called Transformation. So what she and I are doing on these Sundays is we're going through week by week, going through the messages. We began with the very first message. We were supposed to go through the 1 through 10. Last week, I skipped ahead to message 4, so that's why now we're at message 3, even though this is week 4. The great thing is, by the time we finish this message, we're back on track. You all can go back and watch them together. But this book, I think, is so powerful. And if you've missed these previous conversations, you can catch them all on our IG Live here, as well as on other social media platforms, too. Let's see, someone else says it requires a mindset shift. Very true. Very true. And Tessa says, I have to always remember our why is our big rock. That's it. And I think that's it. And Dr. Taz, I'm glad you said something else, because I think as human beings, and I will break it down even to a level I can better understand, as entrepreneurs who are involved in a lot of things, this may also be the reason why we are not succeeding in our big goal, because it's gotten kind of overshadowed by other stuff. And I think that's why I said this message can apply to so many different areas of life, because it really helps us to remember what's the why, as Tessa says. What is it you're supposed to be doing? What is the assignment? And you give in every one of the messages, everyone, Dr. Taz gives what she calls a gleam recap. And the one for this one is a scripture. And it is a message that I think is really powerful, but it's based on this. Determine the focal point in your personal career and spiritual lives, then make sure God is guiding you in each. So I want to talk about that, Dr. Taz, because, again, faith is a big part of this. I mean, you kind of bring this all together. Why is it important for us to stay focused on the focal point? Again, this message is about primary focus, but why is that important for us to stay focused and to make sure that it is God-centered?
Well, Cyrus, it goes back to the scripture at the beginning. We have to make sure that what we're doing is in alignment with what God wants us to do and not worry about all these other things. And then I think the other reason it's so important, I'm going to go to message 4 now, is because He's the one that keeps us on track. He gives us the primary focus, and He will help us to stay on track. Also, I think as you read these two together, I believe I talk about, and this is not the way I write it, but I talk about a peace, and when you are in His will, it's going to be peaceful. It's not going to be a struggle. I'm not saying you're not going to have some concerns that you have to work through. It's not just going to hand it to you, but it's peaceful. And so whenever you feel uneasy, you might want to see if you're off track, because you should have a calmness about yourself. I think one of the scripture talks about you'll have this glow. You'll be radiant. There'll be a light there. Not that people say, oh, you're just glowing today. I don't know. It doesn't always have to be that type of light.
Right.
But you might be glowing, but you just feel the warmth in you. And when you don't feel that warmth or you're uneasy, that's a message from God trying to get your attention. And I think that for sometimes we ignore it and we just continue to go the way that we want to go. And that's the reason why I think that when you talk about that gleam recap and the fact that it has to be of the focal point, He always has to be the focal point, because without Him, it don't take us long to go off the cliff.
Yeah.
So, and that's in all aspects of our lives. It's a personal, the career, and then that spiritual aspect also.
You know what else I thought about after reading this and thinking about this show with you today, Dr. Taz, and it may not have been in your mind when you wrote it, but as the reader, what I took away from it is thinking about why you want to change in the first place. And I guess what I mean by that is, are you changing because you want to become who you believe you were created to be? Or are you changing because of who someone else told you should be? Have you heard that from readers about this whole thing, kind of making them think about the why they want to transform in the first place?
I have, Cyrus, and I think that's kind of put me in my little spiral today with my epiphany, because it's so easy. How can I say this? There are good things that happen in our life, and they happen at the right time.
Yeah.
But what happens sometimes for us, we stay married to that, even though we're evolving. And so as we evolve, we know that we're growing, for lack of a better words, guys, we're growing stronger. But those around us don't always see it that way because they have this first impression of us. And most times people's impression never change. So they determine how they're going to deal with you, how they're going to interact with you. So, I've been working with some folks one-on-one. And so when you talk about the change, is it the need to change or is it the wanting to change? I think, Cyrus, that folks are they're torn. They know they need to change, but what do I have to give up to change?
Yeah.
Because I have to give up something. And then the question becomes, is what quote unquote people think about me really true?
Yeah.
And some people are not willing to deal with that because, again, that's that thinking, that's that emotion. Why is that emotion more significant than you and your well-being?
Yeah. You are glowing today, I may add, Dr. Tyler. In fact, Tessa says it is a serum of joy that oozes out of you. I like that,
Well,
Tessa.
Thank you. Thank you. I like that.
Yeah. You look great, but you always do, though. Talk to
Well,
Dr.
thank you.
Tyler. So the other part of this, she gives us a gleam recap, everybody, and the message that she gives us, but she also gives us a reflect and connect. I want to mention one of these, and it's the homework for our audience for this week, Dr. Tyler, and it's the very first one. What has your primary focus? Not what is your primary focus. What has your primary focus? Why is that a question our audience should be asking?
And I like the way you say it's not what, it's what has, not what is. We typically talk about what our primary focus is, but that's not necessarily what has our focus.
Right.
And it takes some time to figure out what has your focus. And so therefore, when you're talking about transformation, if you don't know what has your focus, how can you transform? Because you don't know what you're transforming from. You don't know what you're going to have to overcome in order to be the person that you want to be. And so that's the reason I had that as the first question. What has your primary focus?
Yeah. Yeah. And it is such an important question. And this is such an important message. So let's do a recap then, Dr. Toss. For those, again, who are just coming in, we're embarked on a 10-part series, but we're in week number 4 today. I want to walk you guys through. There are 10 messages in Dr. Taz's book, Transformation. These are the ones that we have covered so far. Message 1 was change is challenging. Message 2 was free will. Message 3, we actually just went over here on week 4. It's primary focus. Message 4, we went over on week 3, which is staying on track. And that's what we're going to be doing moving forward to the best of our ability. So those are the 4 we've covered so far, Dr. Taz. Change is challenging, free will, primary focus, and staying on track. By this point, as we've gotten to this point almost halfway through, what do you hope people are thinking about as they are reflecting and connecting the 4 of these together?
Yes, sir. So I hope they're feeling some kind of way, for lack of a better way of saying it, because at this point, your heart should be palpitating. But I hope that, even though we've done it in reverse, that you know that you can stay the course. Yeah. Because this is going to be some work, because you have to be honest with yourself. So I'm hoping that people are beginning to feel some kind of way and also understand that transformation in any aspect of your life, it is a process. And to truly transform, you've got to do some work, because you have to get to know who you really are, not the person you present to everybody else or to different people. You have to know who you truly are. And so I'm hoping that folks are really begin to feel a little uncomfortable, because if you're not feeling uncomfortable, then I'm not sure if you're thinking about this as much as you need to think about it. Are you being honest in your thoughts?
And I would even add, Dr. Taz, if there will even be transformed by the end otherwise, right? Because, again, that's like I mentioned to you before, what a guest said to me about the difference between another year and a new year, right? I mean, if they're not going to do that work, they're going to be the same person they were when they started message 1. Tessa also says there, and Tessa, I like this point too, going to what you were saying earlier, Dr. Taz, they talk about other people, they only know their version and not the actual version of your vision. They are unable to see it, and that's true. And I think that's where a lot of people kind of get off track because we start listening to other people who might be well-meaning, but the vision has been given to them. So they're only speaking from the perspective that they can, right, when it comes to anything. So
Exactly.
I want to mention this, Dr. Todd, because we have not talked about it, and I want you to go ahead and start planting the seed for them as we're going throughout these weeks. Next week, we'll be halfway through the messages. You're building this bigger than what we're doing here. You're going to be building a community, even on Facebook. Talk to us about what you hope kind of happens with this book, Transformation, and the community you're able to build around it.
Well, thank you, Cyrus. What I want to do is build a community, and like I'm bad with names, but as the person indicated, this takes work, and sometimes people are giving you their best advice, but it's only from their perspective, and they don't really know your perspective. So what I wanted to do was build a community with individuals who are all looking at how they can transform into their better life, whatever that is in whatever aspect. So my goal is to have private groups where we can do some one-on-ones, and then some one-on-ones outside of the group, so that I can get to hear what you're really looking at changing and see how I can help you to shift. So that's what my hope is, that then we can start the domino effect. So you've got me working with folks, then you got people who will also graduate, and they'll be able to then help people within their circles also.
Right. I should mention not only is Dr. Taz an author, she's also a coach, as you can tell, someone who is doing the work constantly and helping other people to do the work too. And what I love about you, Dr. Taz, is that you also, and you've heard her say in this conversation about the importance of transparency. She's very transparent in her books. Her first book was called Stronger. Now she has her third full-length book, Transformation, and she shares a lot of her own self in this. And we're able to get to know her just as we're kind of able to get to know each other in this community. So again, the book is Transformation. We are now, next week will be week 5. We'll be on message 5 then. So we invite you guys to join us back here on whatever platform you're joining us on. Of course, our primary focus for this particular live show is Instagram. That's our primary focus, but we let other people in. So you guys can be able to watch this on Facebook and YouTube and other places. But Dr. Taz, how can they stay connected with you?
Well, as Cyrus said, this is our primary focus right now is Instagram. So you can reach out to me on Dr.TeresaASmith on Instagram. And I'm on Instagram all the time, and I will reply back to you.
All right, Dr. Taz, another great chat with you. Appreciate it. I'll be back with you next week for Message 5.
Thank you, Cyrus.
You're welcome. And we thank your audience for tuning into this episode of Cyrus Represents. Make sure you guys click the link in my bio to head over to Amazon.com to get your copy of Transformation on Amazon. Join the group. We want you to join the conversation. Let us know your thoughts. And we'll see you back here next week. Take care.